Welcome to the Historical Interface Museum.
Britain, 1750 to 1900. Expansion, trade, and industry.
All evidence loaded and ready for investigation.
So, what have we got this time, Curator?
Select an option.
All right.
Protest selected.
Question: what did people do about the problems they were facing?
AT1C, cross-check motive.
Remember, people have different attitudes, different ideas.
Change vector. Player engaging. Active screen.
And a text.
On midnight Saturday, a number of armed men surprised two sentries outside Cartwright's mill and, having secured their arms and persons, made a violent attack, broke in window frames and fired a volley of shots into premises. A number of voices cried out, "Bang up, murderer, pulled out door." For about 20 minutes the battle continued, during which 140 shots were fired from the mill.
What's going on?
Response, violence.
The 11th of April, 1812, local handcroppers attack Rawfields Mill in Yorkshire.
Handcroppers.
They used large handheld shears to finish the surface of woven cloth, but their skills had been replaced by machines.
So?
So the men lost their jobs.
And that's what made them angry?
Reconstruction to visor.
I mean, it's gotten worse and worse. I mean, now we just live off oats, really, don't we, and blue milk. That's milk what's had the cream taken off for those what can afford butter and cheese. The likes of what we haven't seen for quite a while, I can tell you. I mean, well, you can see John, I mean, he's just gone down on himself, haven't you?
Aye, and you feel, I don't know, you feel so angry. You've been kicked, you've been hurt, and you want to hurt somebody back.
Are these their real words?
No, but the TV scriptwriter has based all this on evidence from the time.
Right.
Cartwright said he's going to introduce these machines just on an experimental basis. In went the machines and out came the men.
Remember this as well, it's not just individuals who are out of work. Small cropping shops like this, many of them are going to the wall because the small man can't compete with a factory.
It's the cropping shops, incidentally, which do the best work which are going to the wall. Because very often they're the people who take most pride in the work.
Is that really what they thought?
Before radio and television, when few working people could write, it's very difficult to know what they would have thought.
Actor loop, self-engaged.
Up to now, nigh on nothing's been written that shows the working classes in a fair and accurate light. And the press is all controlled by the ruling classes. And if they even bother to notice us, 'tis only to twist the facts, laugh at our hopes, magnify our faults. Historians and writers of a future age will only have garbled tales to guide them.
Error, loop deactivate.
Who was that?
Don't mind him. That was William Lovett, who wasn't a Luddite.
A Luddite?
Luddites smashed machinery, attacked mills. It was their response to the problems caused by changes in industry.
All right. Reactivate that mill loop.
The alarm bell in the mill was rung, and a large number of stones were thrown from the roof, which had an instant effect. Otherwise, a quantity of oil and acid would have been poured down. When firing had stopped, the guards heard the cries of two unfortunate men lying in their own blood and writhing under the torture of their terrible wounds. "For God's sake," cried one, "shoot me. Put me out of my misery."
Did people use violence a lot?
You'll love this. It's a riot.
Rapid data. 1815.
Bread riots in Bridport. Bloodshed at the Glasgow soup kitchens and at Merthyr Tydfil when wages were cut.
1830. Swing riots.
Desperate farm labourers in Kent and all across southern England smashed threshing machines and set fire to hayricks.
1886.
Unemployed. Trafalgar Square, London.
1887.
All right, I get the point. They were desperate, they rioted. But there must have been other ways to make things better. Why didn't they just vote differently at the next election?
Response, political change.
All adults having the vote is taken for granted in Britain today, but in the early 19th century, attitudes were different. Just 4% of the adult male population could vote, and women couldn't vote at all. Parliament was controlled by the big landowners.
That's not fair.
Some people thought it was.
The British Constitution is the best that ever was since the creation of the world, and it is not possible to make it any better. There's no way to improve it. I will go further and say that the Constitution possesses the full and entire confidence of the country.
But change was on the way.
1793, France. King Louis XVI is executed by the French revolutionaries. Liberty, equality, fraternity, they cry. In Britain, the government fears the mob will topple them too. They tax the press. They make workers' unions treasonable. But in smoky back rooms in Scotland, in Sheffield, in London, radicals plan their campaign against Parliament. The seeds are sown for the battle for reform.
All right, show me this battle.
No, that was a figure of speech. The battle for reform was a slow, drawn-out process. Discussions, demonstrations.
Demonstrations then.
No shortage of choice here.
All right, I'll have that one.
In August 1819, thousands of people came to St. Peter's Fields in Manchester to listen to a famous speaker of the day, Henry Hunt. They carried banners and slogans demanding parliamentary reform.
Any first-hand accounts?
Plenty.
Any women?
Very few working-class women wrote.
Well, who's this then?
Jemima Bamford. Her account survives only because it's included in her husband's book.
Animate actor.
I was with the other women at the head of the procession. I'd heard that if we country people went with our banners, the soldiers would attack us, and I was uneasy. In a minute or two, some soldiers came riding up. People said they were only come to keep order, but I was alarmed. Then there was a shouting, a waving of swords, and the soldiers rode amongst the people. A moment after, a man passed by, without hat on, wiping the blood from his head with his hand. It ran down his arm in a great stream. I went down some steps into a passageway and sat on some firewood. And when everybody had gone, I went back to the field. I durstn't look around lest I see that which I most dreaded. My husband's corpse.
It said 11 people were killed and 400 wounded.
Whose fault was it?
It depends whose side you were on. It's not surprising the cavalry failed to control themselves. They were totally undisciplined, led by officers with no military experience. They were frightened and, no doubt, were all driven by political hatred. So men, women and children were cut down. I can't say for sure if the Riot Act was read, but I do know from actual observation that not the slightest breach of the peace had been committed.
Contrast.
Many sorrowing families will put the blame for yesterday's events squarely on Hunt and his friends. They ignored the warnings and invited masses of people to attend their meeting. These rabble-rousers then stirred them up with fiery words. The keenness of the troops in doing their duty has led, we are sorry to say, to many serious incidents.
How can people think so differently about the same event?
How any event is seen depends on a person's background, experience, political belief.
Animate actor.
We were in London's East End. There was a little girl...
Hang on, why have I got him again?
It's an example of someone affected by their experiences.
There was a little girl on the stairs screaming for help, saying that her father was killing himself. We hurried up and found that the poor fellow was trying to take his own life by running a fork into his throat. He seemed to have been reduced to this miserable state by lack of food. Now, it is my belief that anyone who sees the rights of the working people trampled on by the idle and useless ruling classes and does nothing might as well be holding that fork and driving it into that starving man's throat themselves.
So what did he do to change things?
William Lovett was a founder member of the Chartists.
Why Chartist?
Because they wrote a charter.
The 6 points of the People's Charter.
But if you want to investigate Chartism, you'll need to engage the 1832 Reform Act.
All right.
After huge popular demonstrations all over the country, Parliament was changed in 1832. The new industrial towns could elect their own MPs, and more people could vote.
Including working people?
Very few, I'm afraid.
Then I'm not interested. Reload Chartism.
Animate actor.
Our association called a public meeting to petition Parliament. We wanted a vote every year for every man, and no matter where he lived, and a fair method of voting. And we wanted MPs to be ordinary people earning a wage, not just property owners. Now, these were the 6 points of the People's Charter. Copies of it were sent to every working man's association and all reform associations in the kingdom. And they at once saw in it a plan to give all classes their rightful share in government. And in under a year, over 1 million people had signed.
Over 1 million people?
The first charter, presented to Parliament in 1839, had 1,300,000 signatures.
Text to Visor.
The Chartists are the most tremendous association ever formed. In every mill, every factory, every workshop, Chartist workers are to be found. And this holy bonding of the people who have faith in their future grows greater and stronger with each day.
But what made people become Chartists?
Working people still didn't have the vote. They believed the vote would let them pass laws to solve all their different problems.
Like what?
Everything from low wages to unemployment. There'd been a series of laws that were seen as unfair, like the game laws against poachers, and the poor laws that seemed to make poverty a crime.
Did the Chartists win?
No. Parliament rejected the petition. The Chartist leaders were divided. Some believed in moral force. They wanted working people to be seen acting peaceably and responsibly. That way, Parliament would think they deserved the vote. Others, like the fiery Fergus O'Connor, believed this was
moral force humbug. All your hurry and haste, your bluster and your menace can only lead to the destruction of Chartism. Every man has a right to a musket over his door. We don't need muskets. We need education, schools for the working people. Your preaching violence scares people. You're bringing suffering and persecution and death into our ranks. The soldiers started the carnage. We should muster our battalions now. You just want to be the people's leader. Fergus O'Connor, the great I am of radical politics.
What now?
Plenty more on Chartism.
Middle class response.
Those that had won the vote in 1832 but drew the line at votes for everyone. Or try the later petitions.
1842, petition. 1848, petition.
Presented and rejected.
Why?
Employment was picking up. Wages were getting better. Chartism was petering out. Or try
Chartism, the successes.
Their meetings were great social events. What are you doing?
Weren't there any women Chartists?
Not much evidence, I'm afraid.
What's he doing here?
Select him.
The first draft of the People's Charter suggested that women should get the vote, but as several members thought that demand might hold back votes for men, it was unfortunately left out.
Typical.
We do know there were more than 100 women's Chartist groups. We've accounts of them marching, waving banners, and making speeches.
Can I hear one?
A certain Miss Rothwell, treasurer to the Power Loom Weavers Society.
Animate actor.
In addressing a meeting made up of hundreds of thinking men, I'm uncomfortably aware of being a woman, and know I run the risk of being outcast by society.
Just for making a speech?
Victorians didn't respect the views of women. When the radicals fought for the working class, they were fighting for working men.
Reanimate.
But the persecution me and my family have suffered has made me think. You see, if Mr. Trimble hadn't sacked me for attending a meeting of the Power Loom Weavers, I'd still be the unthinking slave of the Power Loom, without knowing why as a slave. While there's a drop of British blood in my veins, I'll strive to free my class. And we female workers in Bradford will be in the onward march to a fair day's wage for a fair day's work.
Would you really be fired for just going to a meeting?
It was a workers' meeting.
So?
Select unions.
All right.
Gallery reform. Response, association.
Friendly societies, trade unions. Just another way of coping with changes in industry. Forget parliamentary reform and distant dreams of democracy. Instead, act now. Help yourself. Club together. At home, at work. Unions were part of that process.
What are these?
Union banners. They were carried on marches, each union competing to have a banner more elaborate, more stunning than their trade rivals.
Visuals to Visor. Coal trimmers, 1888. Change. Stevedores, 1889.
Handshakes appear again and again.
Change. Ipswich Dockers, 1896. Change. Sheet glass flatteners, 1890s.
The women represent justice, industry, and truth. And on the right, a widow with her children.
What are they doing here?
Change. Boiler scalers, 1890s.
Unions had funds to help families out if things got difficult. Pensions, accident insurance, sickness benefits.
Change. Vehicle workers, 1891.
It was these friendly activities that helped get unionism legalized in 1872.
Were there strikes?
As a last resort, yes.
I'll take rapid data.
1765, Colt, 1792, Seaman.
And the repeal of the combination laws in 1824.
Toll Battle Marchers, Glasgow, 1872, farm laborers, strike.
Select.
I went from place to place as fast as I could, expanding the union. The employers were quaking in their shoes, mad as hornets, but they couldn't bully us no more. We were combined men with the strength of a giant.
Rapid data.
1889, the gas, East End, 1889, the dock strike.
Select.
Every industry is paralyzed. Tens of thousands of tons of food is rotting in the ships lying in the Thames. It proves labourers have the future of the world in their hands. Up to now, only one thing's been certain for the docker, that things are miserable and that there's no hope. But the Dockers' Union gives him faith in himself, and suddenly anything is possible for all those slaving in mines, workshops, factories.
Was anything possible like he said?
Data to Visor. The 1890s draw to a close. The employers face the new century with renewed strength. Strikes are broken, and though the unions grow in size, many of the greatest have collapsed. The gas workers, the dockers, the farm labourers, and the engineers all have their hopes shattered. The working man secures the vote at last, but for women it's not to be. Not for another 30 years will they achieve equal terms. How far had working people come? And despite all their efforts and sacrifices, how far had they still to go?
Your investigation time is over.
But...
All systems disengaging.